The champagne glass slipped from my mother's trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the penthouse. She stared at the man standing beside me, her face pale as winter snow. "Madison," she whispered, "who exactly did you marry?" I smiled, watching her world crumble the same way mine had crumbled every day for 25 years under her constant criticism. "Mom, meet my husband, Alexander." The same Alexander whose name graced the tallest building in downtown Chicago. The same Alexander she'd been bragging about to her country club friends for months, never knowing her failure of a daughter was sleeping in his bed every night. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 3 months earlier, I was stacking books at Riverside Community Library, my fingers dusty with old paper and broken dreams. At 25, I'd become everything my mother, Patricia Holloway, had predicted: unmarried, unremarkable, and utterly invisible to the world. "Madison, sweetheart," she'd said that morning over her perfectly arranged breakfast of steel-cut oats and fresh berries, "perhaps it's time we discussed realistic expectations about your future." I didn't look up from my coffee. These conversations always ended the same way, with me feeling smaller than the sugar crystals dissolving in my cup. Mrs. Chen from the Bridge Club mentioned her nephew Daniel is still single. He's 38, works in accounting, and has a lovely collection of model trains. She paused, stirring her oats with mechanical precision. "I know he's not ideal, but Madison, we must be practical about these things." The word practical hit like a slap. In Patricia Holloway's vocabulary, practical meant settling. It meant accepting that her daughter would never inspire love letters, or midnight drives, or the kind of passion that made people write songs. "I'm not interested in Daniel, Mom." "Interest is a luxury you can't afford." Her voice carried that familiar edge of disappointment. "Look at yourself, Madison. You work at a library making barely enough to afford that studio apartment in the warehouse district. You dress like someone's forgotten aunt, you never go anywhere, you never meet anyone. How exactly do you expect love to find you?" I wanted to tell her that maybe love wasn't supposed to be a transaction, a desperate negotiation between loneliness and compromise. Instead, I finished my coffee in silence. The library was my sanctuary, filled with stories of people braver than I'd ever be. I spent my days helping elderly patrons find large print mysteries and college students locate research materials. It wasn't glamorous, but there was peace in the quiet rustle of pages and the soft whisper of air conditioning. That particular Tuesday started like any other. Mrs. Rodriguez needed help finding cookbooks for her granddaughter's quinceañera. Tommy Patterson, age 7, wanted every book about dinosaurs we had in stock. The morning passed in its usual gentle rhythm until the front doors opened, and he walked in. Tall, dark-haired, wearing jeans and a simple gray Henley that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He moved with the kind of confidence that suggested he'd never doubted his place in the world, never questioned whether he deserved the space he occupied. "Excuse me," he said, approaching my desk. His voice was warm honey over gravel. "I'm looking for information about local architecture. Specifically, buildings constructed in the 1920s. I blinked, momentarily forgetting how to form words. "Architecture. Yes, right. We have several resources." He smiled, and something inside my chest fluttered like startled birds. "I'd appreciate any help you can give me." For the next hour, I pulled books about Chicago's architectural history, spread maps across the reading table, and found myself talking about the city's hidden gems, with an enthusiasm I didn't know I possessed. He listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and never once made me feel like the awkward library girl my mother saw when she looked at me. "You really know this stuff," he said, studying a photograph of the Monadnock building. "Are you an architecture student?" I laughed, the sound more bitter than intended. "No, I read a lot. History major in college, but that didn't exactly lead to a career. History's important. Understanding where we came from helps us figure out where we're going." He closed the book and looked directly at me. "I'm Alex, by the way. Alex Morrison." Madison Holloway." "Madison." He repeated my name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "Would you maybe like to get coffee sometime?" I'd love to hear more about your favorite historical spots in the city. The question hung in the air between us like a bridge I was terrified to cross. Men like Alex Morrison, handsome, confident, obviously successful, didn't ask girls like me for coffee. There had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding. Yes. I mean, if you want to. I don't know why you'd want to, but… Madison. His voice was gentle, stopping my spiral of self-doubt. I'm asking because I want to. You're interesting. You're passionate about things that matter, and you have the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. That night, I stared at myself in my bathroom mirror, trying to see what Alex Morrison had seen. Brown hair that never quite behaved. Brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. A face my mother often described as, quote, pleasant enough. Nothing special. Nothing that should inspire a man to cross a library and ask for coffee. But he had asked. And for the first time in years, I'd said yes to something that terrified me. Our first coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into long walks along the lakefront, talking about everything and nothing, until the streetlights flickered on. He was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in my thoughts, and completely unaware of how he made my entire world shift on its axis every time he smiled. What do you do for work? I asked one evening as we shared dessert at a small Italian restaurant. I'm in business, he said vaguely. Import and export, mostly. Pretty boring stuff. I didn't push. Everyone had parts of their lives they kept private. Besides, I was too busy marveling at the fact that someone like Alex wanted to spend time with someone like me. 3 weeks into whatever we were calling this, my mother cornered me in the kitchen during my weekly, obligatory dinner visit. You've been different lately, she said, her sharp eyes studying my face like a detective examining evidence. Happier. Did something happen? I hesitated. Telling Patricia about Alex felt like inviting a hurricane into a garden. But the secret was burning inside me, desperate to be shared. I've been seeing someone, I admitted quietly. Her eyebrows shot up. Seeing someone? Madison, please tell me you haven't gotten involved with some inappropriate man. You know how easily you can be taken advantage of. He's not inappropriate, Mom. He's kind and intelligent and… What does he do for work? He's in business. Import and export. Patricia's expression soured. Import and export. That could mean anything. Madison, you're so naive. Men will tell you whatever you want to hear, especially men targeting vulnerable women. I'm not vulnerable. Sweetheart, you work at a library. You live alone in a questionable neighborhood. You've never had a serious relationship. Of course you're vulnerable. She reached across the table and patted my hand with false sympathy. Bring him to dinner next Sunday. Let me meet this mysterious businessman. The suggestion filled me with dread. Bringing Alex into my mother's orbit felt like feeding him to wolves. But refusing would only confirm her suspicions that I was hiding something shameful. Okay, I heard myself saying. I'll ask him. Alex agreed immediately, which somehow made everything worse. He had no idea what he was walking into. No concept of Patricia Holloway's ability to dissect a person's worth in a single conversation. Don't worry, he said, kissing my forehead as we stood outside my apartment building. Mothers love me. I wanted to warn him that Patricia Holloway wasn't like other mothers. She was a force of nature wrapped in Chanel suits and disappointment, armed with decades of social warfare and an encyclopedic knowledge of exactly where to aim her verbal arrows for maximum damage. But looking into his confident eyes, I almost believed that maybe this time would be different. Maybe Alex Morrison was strong enough to weather the storm of my mother's disapproval. Maybe, for once in my life, I'd chosen something that wouldn't crumble under the weight of Patricia Holloway's expectations. The following Sunday approached like an execution date, and I spent the entire week alternating between excitement and terror. Alex was about to meet the woman who'd spent 25 years convincing me I'd never be enough for anyone. I had no idea that in 7 days, everything I thought I knew about my life would shatter like champagne glasses on marble floors. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock, because Alex Morrison was the kind of man who arrived precisely when he said he would. I smoothed my navy dress for the 100th time, checked my reflection in the hallway mirror, and opened the door to my mother's Beacon Hill townhouse with sweaty palms. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. You look beautiful, Alex said, handing me a bouquet of white roses. Behind him, a sleek black car idled at the curb. Not flashy, but expensive in that understated way that screamed money to anyone who knew how to look. Patricia appeared in the doorway like a general inspecting troops. She wore her signature uniform, cream-colored suit, pearl necklace, and an expression that could freeze hellfire. Her eyes swept over Alex with surgical precision, cataloging every detail from his Italian leather shoes to his perfectly tailored blazer. "You must be Alexander," she said, extending one manicured hand. "Patricia Holloway. I've heard so little about you." The barb hit its mark. I had been deliberately vague about Alex, and Patricia had noticed. "The pleasure's mine, Mrs. Holloway," Alex replied smoothly, shaking her hand with just the right amount of firmness. "Thank you for having me. Your home is stunning." Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. "Thank you. It's been in the family for 3 generations. Please come in." The dining room was set for battle. Patricia's finest china, crystal glasses that caught the light like weapons, and enough silverware to perform surgery. She'd positioned herself at the head of the table, placing Alex directly in her crosshairs while relegating me to the sidelines like a spectator at my own trial. "So, Alexander," Patricia began the moment we were seated, "Madison tells me you're an import and export. How wonderfully vague." Alex reached for his water glass, completely unfazed. "I find most people's eyes glaze over when I start talking about supply chain logistics and international trade regulations. I try to spare them the boredom." "How considerate." Patricia's tone suggested it was anything but. "And what exactly do you import and export?" "Various commodities. Electronics, textiles, raw materials, whatever markets demand." I watched the exchange like a tennis match, waiting for Patricia to serve her killing shot. She was just getting warmed up. "That sounds quite lucrative. You must travel extensively." "Some, though I prefer to stay local when possible." Alex glanced at me with a warmth that made my heart stutter. "Chicago has everything I need." Patricia's laugh was ice crystallizing in midair. "How romantic. And where did you two meet? Madison hasn't provided many details about your courtship." "The library," Alex said simply. "Your daughter helped me with some research. She's incredibly knowledgeable about Chicago's architectural history. Yes, Madison has always been quite the bookworm. More comfortable with dusty old buildings than actual social situations." Patricia served the salad with surgical precision. "I suppose that's why she's never had a serious relationship before now." The words hit like a slap. I stared at my plate, cheeks burning with humiliation. This was Patricia's specialty. Exposing your vulnerabilities in front of witnesses, making you small so she seemed larger. "Actually," Alex said, his voice carrying a subtle edge, "I find Madison's passion for history fascinating. She sees connections other people miss, finds beauty in forgotten details. It's a rare gift." Patricia blinked, momentarily thrown off her rhythm. "How? Nice. Though I worry about Madison's tendency to live in the past. She's always been unrealistic about her prospects." "What kind of prospects?" Alex's question was deceptively casual. "Oh, you know, career advancement, financial stability, suitable partnerships." Patricia's eyes glittered with malice. "Madison has always been a dreamer, but dreams don't pay rent, do they?" The dinner continued like a slow-motion car crash. Patricia dissected my college choices, a history degree so impractical, my living situation, that neighborhood is becoming quite rough, and my career trajectory. Library work is noble but hardly lucrative. Each comment was designed to showcase my inadequacies, to make Alex question what he saw in someone so fundamentally disappointing. But something strange happened. Instead of retreating, Alex defended me at every turn. When Patricia criticized my apartment, he praised my independence. When she questioned my career choices, he highlighted my intelligence and dedication. He transformed Patricia's weapons into shields, protecting me from attacks I'd been absorbing for decades. "Madison mentioned you're involved with several charity organizations," Alex said during the main course, smoothly redirecting the conversation. "That must be very fulfilling." Patricia preened, always eager to discuss her social prominence. Oh yes, I chair the Children's Hospital Gala Committee and sit on the board of the Museum of Fine Arts. Community service is so important, don't you think? Absolutely. I have great respect for people who give their time to worthy causes. And what about you, Alexander? Any charitable involvements? I prefer to keep my giving private, he said. But yes, I believe in supporting the community. Patricia's smile turned predatory. How admirable. Though I imagine your business doesn't provide much opportunity for large-scale philanthropy. The comment hung in the air like a challenge. This was Patricia's nuclear option. The suggestion that Alex wasn't successful enough, wealthy enough, important enough for her standards. Alex set down his fork and looked directly at her. Mrs. Holloway, may I ask you something? Of course. What would make you happy for Madison? What kind of life do you want for your daughter? The question caught Patricia off guard. She'd spent the entire evening attacking but hadn't expected to defend her position. I want her to be secure, she said carefully, protected. I want her to find someone who can provide for her, someone from the right kind of family with the right kind of background. And what if she already has? Patricia laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Alexander, I'm sure you're a lovely man, but let's be realistic. Madison needs someone established, someone with real prospects. She's not getting any younger, and her options are limited. The silence that followed felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Alex's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a subtle straightening that suggested dangerous currents beneath his calm surface. I see, he said quietly. Thank you for being so direct about your concerns. Patricia smiled triumphantly, believing she'd won this round. I hope you understand it's nothing personal. I simply want what's best for my daughter. Of course, every mother wants to protect her child. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation about weather and current events. Patricia had drawn blood and was satisfied with her work. I sat in miserable silence, watching Alex's face for signs of doubt, for the moment when he'd realized Patricia was right, that I was more trouble than I was worth. When it came time to leave, Patricia walked us to the door with the satisfied air of someone who'd successfully exterminated a pest. It was lovely meeting you, Alexander, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I do hope you'll consider what we discussed tonight. Alex shook her hand politely. Mrs. Holloway, thank you for your hospitality. This evening has been illuminating. In the car afterward, we drove in heavy silence. I stared out the window, waiting for Alex to tell me this wasn't going to work, that Patricia was right about my limitations, that he'd made a mistake. Instead, he pulled over at a scenic overlook facing the harbor and turned off the engine. Madison, he said softly, look at me. I forced myself to meet his eyes, bracing for the gentle rejection I knew was coming. Your mother is wrong about you, he said, about everything. You're not settling for me, and I'm sure as hell not settling for you. What happened back there? That wasn't love. That was fear disguised as protection. Alex, you don't understand. She's not wrong about my prospects. I am just a librarian. I do live in a crappy apartment. I don't have connections or money or... He silenced me with a kiss that tasted like defiance and possibility. None of that matters, he whispered against my lips. None of it. But as we drove back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Patricia had succeeded in planting seeds of doubt, not in Alex's mind, but in mine. Because deep down, in the place where childhood wounds never quite heal, I was starting to wonder if my mother might be right after all. The phone started ringing at 7 a.m. the next morning, Patricia's name flashing on my screen like a warning signal. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. By the fourth call, I finally answered. Madison, we need to talk. Patricia's voice was crisp with urgency. I've been thinking about last night, and I'm more concerned than ever about this Alexander situation. I pressed the phone between my ear and shoulder while pouring coffee with shaky hands. Mom, it's early. Can we discuss this later? No, we cannot. I barely slept. That man is hiding something, Madison. I can feel it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia, who'd spent decades hiding her own family's financial struggles behind designer clothes and charity galas, Was questioning someone else's authenticity? He seems genuine to me, I said, though doubt had been gnawing at me since dinner. Alex's answers had been smooth, maybe too smooth. And that car, those clothes, they suggested money he claimed not to have. Genuine men don't speak in riddles about their careers. Import and export? Electronics and textiles? Madison, that's what people say when they're involved in something illegal. That's ridiculous, Mom. Is it? Think about it. He won't give specifics about his work. He appears out of nowhere with expensive clothes and a luxury car. And he's targeting a vulnerable young woman with no experience in relationships. Each word hit like a physical blow. Patricia had a gift for finding your deepest insecurities and pressing until they bled. I have to go, I whispered. I'm late for work. Madison, I'm only trying to protect you. Don't let your desperation make you blind to the obvious. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. Was I desperate? Patricia seemed to think so. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was so starved for affection that I'd convinced myself Alex Morrison was something he wasn't. At the library, I threw myself into work, reorganizing the reference section with obsessive precision. But every time the front door opened, my heart jumped, hoping to see Alex's familiar figure. He didn't come. Around lunch, my coworker Jenny Martinez approached my desk with a concerned expression. Jenny was 5 years younger than me, but infinitely more confident, the kind of woman who collected boyfriends like vintage books. You look terrible, she said bluntly. What happened? I found myself spilling everything. The dinner, Patricia's accusations, my growing uncertainty about Alex's mysterious career. Jenny listened without judgment, occasionally making sympathetic sounds. Madison, she said when I finished, your mother sounds toxic as hell. She's protective. No, she's controlling. There's a difference. Jenny perched on the edge of my desk. This Alex guy, has he ever asked you for money? No. Has he pressured you for anything? Sex, personal information, access to your accounts? No, nothing like that. Then what exactly is the problem? So he's private about his work, maybe he's embarrassed about his job, or maybe he's just modest. Not everyone needs to broadcast their business to strangers. But as the day wore on, Patricia's words echoed louder than Jenny's reassurance. When Alex texted asking if I wanted to grab dinner, I found myself analyzing every word for hidden meanings. How was your day, beautiful? Want to try that new French place on Michigan Avenue? The French place was expensive. How did he know about it? How could he afford it on an import/export salary that he'd never actually defined? I texted back, maybe somewhere more casual? I'm tired. Of course. Your place? I'll bring takeout. An hour later, Alex arrived at my apartment carrying bags from an upscale Italian restaurant I'd never been able to afford. He kissed my cheek and started unpacking containers of food that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. You're quiet tonight, he said, noting my distraction. Everything okay? Just tired, I lied, watching him move around my tiny kitchen with easy familiarity. Everything about him radiated confidence and success. From his perfectly fitted clothes to the expensive watch that caught the light when he reached for plates. How was work? I asked, testing the waters. The usual, meetings, phone calls, paperwork. He handed me a glass of wine that probably cost more than my monthly phone bill. Nothing interesting enough to bore you with. There it was again, the vague deflection. Patricia's voice whispered in my ear. Genuine men don't speak in riddles about their careers. Alex, I said carefully, what exactly do you do all day? I mean, specifically? He paused in serving the pasta, his shoulders tensing almost imperceptibly. Why do you ask? I realized I don't really know much about your work. When people ask what my boyfriend does, I never know what to say. Tell them I'm boring, he said with a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. Trust me, international trade regulations aren't exactly cocktail party conversation. But I pressed on, Patricia's warnings making me bold. Do you have an office? Employees? I mean, if you're successful enough to afford places like this, I gestured at the expensive takeout, you must have a pretty big operation. Alex set down the serving spoon and looked at me directly. Madison, where is this coming from? My mother thinks you're hiding something. The words hung between us like a confession. Alex's expression hardened, and for a moment, I glimpsed something behind his usual warmth, something guarded and dangerous. "Your mother," he said slowly, "has quite a few opinions about me. She's worried. She thinks it's strange that you won't talk about your work, that you appear to have money but won't say where it comes from. And what do you think?" The question was a trap, and we both knew it. If I said I trusted him, I was admitting I doubted my mother's judgment. If I said I had concerns, I was confirming that Patricia had gotten to me. "I think," I said carefully, "that I care about you. And when I care about someone, I want to know them, really know them." Alex was quiet for a long moment, staring at the wine in his glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, older, wearier. "Madison, there are things about my life that are complicated. Family situations, business arrangements that require discretion. I'm not hiding anything illegal or dangerous, but I can't always be completely open about every detail." "Why not?" "Because some secrets aren't mine to tell. Because sometimes protecting people you care about means keeping certain information private." It was the most honest he'd ever been with me, and somehow that made it worse. Because honestly or not, it was still evasive. Still carefully crafted to reveal nothing, while seeming to reveal everything. "Alex, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." He nodded, though his posture suggested he was bracing for impact. "Are you married?" His eyes widened with genuine shock. "What? No, Madison, absolutely not." "Are you involved in anything illegal?" "No." Are you using me for something? Information, access to something?" Pain flashed across his features. "Madison, how can you even ask that?" "Because I don't understand why someone like you would want someone like me," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush of honesty and hurt. "You're sophisticated and successful and confident, and I'm nobody. I work at a library. I live in a studio apartment. I have no connections, no money, no influence. What could you possibly see in me?" Alex stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the parking lot of my building. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, someone harder, more complex than the man who brought me flowers and listened to my stories about forgotten buildings. "You want to know what I see in you?" he said, without turning around. "I see someone genuine in a world full of fake people. Someone who finds joy in simple things. Who treats everyone with kindness, regardless of their status. Someone who makes me remember what it feels like to be valued for who I am rather than what I can provide." "But that's just it," I said desperately. "I don't even know who you are." He turned then, and the look on his face made my breath catch. It was raw with emotion, longing, frustration, and something that looked almost like fear. "Madison, if I told you everything about my life, everything about who I really am and where I come from, would you promise me something?" "What?" "Would you promise that it wouldn't change how you feel about me, that you wouldn't start seeing me differently?" The question terrified me because it suggested that whatever Alex was hiding was big enough to alter everything between us. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability he was trying so hard to conceal, I found myself nodding. "I promise." Alex took a deep breath, like a man preparing to jump from a great height. "Okay," he said quietly, "but not here, not like this. If I'm going to tell you the truth, I want to do it properly." "When?" "Saturday. There's somewhere I want to take you, somewhere that will help you understand." After he left that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Patricia's warnings battling with my own desperate hope. In 3 days, I would learn the truth about Alexander Morrison. I just wasn't sure I was prepared for what that truth might be. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made Chicago feel like a postcard. Alex picked me up in a different car, still expensive, but this time it was a pristine vintage Porsche that looked like it belonged in a museum. "New rental?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light despite the anxiety churning in my stomach. Alex's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Not exactly." We drove in relative silence through the city, leaving behind the familiar streets of my neighborhood for areas I rarely visited. The buildings grew taller, the addresses more prestigious, until we were cruising through the heart of Chicago's financial district on a weekend when it should have been deserted. But Alex seemed to know exactly where he was going. He pulled into the underground parking garage of Morrison Tower, a gleaming 60-story monument to corporate success that I'd admired from afar but never had reason to enter. The security guard waved us through without question, as if Alex's presence was not only expected but routine. "Alex," I said as we rode the elevator to the top floor, "what are we doing here?" "I told you I wanted to show you the truth," he said quietly. "This is where it starts." The elevator opened directly into what could only be described as a penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city sprawling below us like a living map. The furnishings were elegant but understated, clearly expensive but chosen for comfort rather than show. And on the massive desk sat a nameplate that made my breath catch: Alexander J. Morrison, Chief Executive Officer. "You own this building," I said, the words coming out like an accusation. "I own the company that owns this building," Alex corrected. "Morrison Industries. We have holdings in real estate, technology, renewable energy, and yes, import and export operations across 3 continents." I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man who'd sat in my tiny kitchen eating takeout with the person who apparently commanded an empire from the clouds. "How much?" I asked numbly. "Madison." "How much, Alex? How much are you worth?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him, despite being surrounded by the trappings of enormous success. "Forbes estimated around $2.8 billion last year, but the markets have been good to us." The number hit me like a physical blow. $2.8 billion. With a B. I worked at a library and worried about whether I could afford name-brand cereal, and I'd been dating one of the richest men in America. "Why?" The word came out as a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" Alex moved to the windows, staring out at the city he apparently owned significant portions of. "Because of exactly what's happening right now. Because the moment people know who I really am, everything changes. They stop seeing Alex the person and start seeing Alexander Morrison the billionaire. So you lied to me." "I never lied. I told you I was in business, that I did import and export. Everything I said was technically true." "You lied by omission. For 2 months, Alex. 2 months of letting me worry about taking you to expensive restaurants. Of feeling guilty when you paid for things I couldn't afford. Of questioning what you could possibly see in someone like me." "Madison, please." "Someone like me," I laughed bitterly. "God, no wonder my mother was suspicious. No wonder she couldn't understand why you'd want to date a librarian. Because billionaires don't date librarians, do they? They date supermodels and socialites and women who understand their world." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" I spun to face him, anger and hurt warring in my chest. "Tell me, Alex, how many other librarians have you dated? How many women from studio apartments in warehouse districts?" His silence was answer enough. "This is insane," I said, pacing the length of his office like a caged animal. "You could buy my entire building with pocket change. You probably make more in a day than I make in a year. And you've been pretending to be some middle-class businessman while I worried about whether I was good enough for you." "You are good enough," Alex said fiercely. "Madison, you're better than anyone I've ever known." "Then why hide it? Why not just tell me the truth from the beginning?" "Because I've been there before." His voice turned bitter. "I've dated women who claimed to love me, who seemed genuine and kind and real, right up until they found out about the money. Then suddenly everything changed. Suddenly, they needed expensive gifts and exotic vacations and invitations to exclusive events. Suddenly, I wasn't Alex anymore. I was an ATM with a pulse." I sank into one of the leather chairs facing his desk, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was telling me. "So you thought I was a gold digger?" "No. God, no. That's the point. You never asked for anything. You never even let me pay for dinner without feeling guilty about it. You were interested in me, not my bank account, because you didn't know there was a bank account to be interested in. But you didn't trust me enough to find out if I'd stay interested after I knew the truth." Alex was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. "Madison, my last serious relationship ended when I found my fiancée in bed with my business partner. She told me later that she'd only been with me for the lifestyle, that she'd never actually loved me. She said I was boring and obsessive, and that she'd done me a favor by cheating because at least now I knew what I was really worth without the money. The pain in his voice made my anger falter. I tried to imagine what that kind of betrayal would do to someone, how it would make them question every relationship that came after. "So you decided to test me," I said quietly, "to see if I'd love you when I thought you were nobody special." I didn't plan it that way. When I first walked into the library, I was genuinely researching Chicago architecture for a development project. But when you helped me, when you lit up talking about the city's history, when you treated me like I was just another person instead of a walking fortune, I didn't want it to end. "And when did you plan to tell me? After we were married? After I'd proven myself worthy of the truth?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I kept telling myself I'd tell you next week, next month, after I was sure you really cared about me. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. How do you tell someone you've been lying about who you are for months?" I stood and walked to the windows, looking down at the city far below. From this height, people looked like ants. Cars like toys. It was a godlike perspective, and I wondered if that's how Alex saw the world, from such a distance that individual lives became insignificant. "Madison," Alex said softly, coming to stand beside me, "I know I should have told you sooner. I know I handled this badly. But my feelings for you are real. They've always been real." "How can I believe that? How can I believe anything you've told me when you've been living a lie this entire time?" "Because you know me, not Alexander Morrison, the CEO, but Alex. The man who listens to your stories about forgotten buildings. The man who brings you flowers and tells you you're beautiful. The man who defended you against your mother's attacks. That person is real, Madison. The money doesn't change who I am." "Doesn't it?" I turned to face him. "Alex, you have more power and influence than most small countries. You make decisions that affect thousands of people. You live in a world I can't even comprehend. How does that not change who you are?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed with an urgent alert. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. "What is it?" I asked. "Nothing. Just a work emergency." But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened as he read whatever message had appeared on his screen. "More lies?" I asked pointedly. Alex sighed and showed me the phone. The headline on the business news alert made my blood run cold. "Morrison Industries CEO, spotted with mystery woman, billionaire's secret romance exposed." Below it was a grainy photo of us outside my apartment building, taken with a telephoto lens. My face was partially obscured, but Alex was clearly recognizable. "How?" I whispered. "I don't know, I've been careful, but—" He ran his hands through his hair. "Madison, I'm sorry, I never wanted you to be dragged into this." "Into what?" "The circus. The media attention, the speculation, the people who will try to find out everything about you." His voice was grim. "By tomorrow morning, every detail of your life will be public knowledge. Where you work, where you live, your family history, your college grades, everything." The reality of what he was saying hit me like a tsunami. I wasn't just Madison Holloway anymore. I was the mystery woman dating one of America's richest men. I was a story, a headline, a target for every gossip columnist and paparazzi photographer in the country. "I have to go," I said suddenly, panic rising in my throat. "I have to get out of here." "Madison, wait." But I was already moving toward the elevator, desperate to escape the suffocating reality of Alexander Morrison's world. A world where privacy was a luxury and love was a commodity to be bought and sold. As the elevator doors closed between us, I saw the pain on Alex's face. But all I could think about was Patricia's voice echoing in my head. "Madison needs someone from the right kind of family with the right kind of background." Turns out she was right. Alex Morrison was exactly the kind of man she'd always wanted for me. The problem was, I was exactly the kind of woman he should never have chosen. I made it exactly 3 blocks from Morrison Tower before the first reporter approached me. "Excuse me, are you Madison Holloway?" The woman was young, aggressive, with the predatory smile of someone who smelled blood in the water. "I'm Rebecca Chen from the Chicago Tribune. Can you comment on your relationship with Alexander Morrison?" I quickened my pace, but she kept up easily, her heels clicking against the sidewalk like gunshots. How long have you been dating? Did you know about his wealth when you started seeing him? What do you think about the age difference? Age difference? I stopped walking. What age difference? Rebecca's smile widened. You're 25, he's 34. Some people are calling it a pattern. Older wealthy men targeting younger, financially vulnerable women. The words hit like a slap. In less than 2 hours, I'd gone from anonymous librarian to gold-digging stereotype. I fumbled for my phone and called the first Uber I could find, ignoring Rebecca's shouted questions as I dove into the back seat. But by the time I reached my apartment, 3 more reporters were waiting outside my building. I had the Uber driver circle the block twice before making a run for the back entrance, my keys shaking in my hands as I struggled with the lock. Inside my studio apartment, I collapsed on my couch and made the mistake of Googling my own name. The results made my stomach turn. Photos of us leaving restaurants, walking along the lakefront, even one of Alex kissing me goodbye outside the library. Someone had been following us for weeks, documenting our relationship like we were zoo animals. The comments sections were worse than the articles. Another gold digger hits the jackpot. She's not even that pretty, must be good in bed. Bet she gets pregnant within 6 months to lock down that money. Smart girl, work at a library, meet a billionaire, retire early. My phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen, and for the first time in my life, I was almost grateful to hear from her. Madison, her voice was breathless with excitement. I just saw the news. Alexander Morrison? The Alexander Morrison? Do you have any idea? Mom, I can't talk right now. Can't talk? Madison, this is the most important thing that's ever happened to our family. Alexander Morrison is one of the most eligible bachelors in America. He's on every most powerful list, every most wealthy list. His family built half of Chicago. I closed my eyes, remembering the pain in Alex's voice when he'd talked about people only seeing him as a bank account. I know who he is, Mom. And you've been hiding this from me? Madison, do you understand what this means? The connections, the opportunities, the social standing. Mom, stop. I need to call Eleanor Whitman immediately. She chairs the hospital board, and if she knows I'm about to be connected to the Morrison family. We're not connected to anything, I shouted. I left him, Mom. I walked away. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. You, what? Patricia's voice was strangled with disbelief. I found out he'd been lying to me about who he was. About everything. So I left. You left Alexander Morrison? Madison, are you having some kind of mental breakdown? I'm hanging up now. Don't you dare hang up on me? Madison, you get back there right now and you apologize to that man. Do you hear me? You apologize and you make this right. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Outside, I could hear the reporters multiplying like bacteria, their voices creating a constant buzz of invasion. By evening, I was trapped in my own home with no food, no way to leave, and no idea how to make the nightmare stop. That's when someone knocked on my door. Not the aggressive pounding of reporters, but a gentle, familiar rhythm. I looked through the peephole and saw Jenny Martinez holding a bag of Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. Let me in, she called softly. I brought reinforcements. I cracked the door, and Jenny slipped inside like a ninja, immediately closing all my blinds and setting the deadbolt. How did you get past the vultures downstairs? I asked. Service elevator, building maintenance uniform. Sometimes it pays to date a guy who works in facilities. She set the takeout on my counter and poured 2 generous glasses of wine. Now, spill. When exactly were you planning to mention that your mysterious boyfriend is richer than God? I didn't know, I said miserably. I just found out this morning. Jenny's eyebrows shot up. He was hiding it? For how long? 2 months. The entire relationship. Shit. Jenny handed me a glass of wine. That's complicated. Over lo mein and spring rolls, I told Jenny everything. Alex's deception, his explanation, the revelation about his wealth, the media circus that had erupted. She listened without judgment, occasionally making sympathetic noises or refilling my wine glass. So let me get this straight, she said when I finished. This guy is worth billions, but he pretended to be middle class to test whether you'd love him for himself? That's oversimplifying it, but basically, yes. And you're mad because he lied or because he's rich? The question caught me off guard, because he lied. Really? Because it sounds like you're also freaked out about the money. I started to protest, but Jenny held up a hand. Madison, I've known you for 3 years. You apologize when you order coffee because you don't want to inconvenience the barista. You buy generic cereal even when the name brand is on sale because you feel guilty about spending money. The idea of dating someone with that much wealth would terrify you, even if he'd been honest from the beginning. She wasn't wrong. Even now, knowing Alex's true identity, part of me couldn't wrap my head around the numbers. $2.8 billion. It was more money than some countries had. But that doesn't excuse the lying, I said weakly. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. Jenny leaned back in her chair. Madison, think about it from his perspective. He's probably had people trying to use him for money his entire life. His own ex-fiancée cheated on him with his business partner. Can you imagine what that would do to your ability to trust people? So I'm supposed to just forgive him? I'm not saying forgive him. I'm saying understand him. There's a difference. We were interrupted by my phone buzzing with a text from an unknown number. Madison, it's Alex. I know you turned off your phone, but I needed to reach you. The reporters will get tired and move on to the next story in a day or two. I've arranged for security to keep them away from your building until then. I'm sorry about all of this. I never wanted you to get hurt. -A. Jenny read the message over my shoulder. He arranged for security? I looked out the window and noticed for the first time that the crowd of reporters had thinned considerably. A discreet black SUV was parked across the street, and 2 men in suits were politely but firmly keeping the remaining media at a distance. Even when you're running away from him, he's protecting you, Jenny observed. That's either really sweet or really controlling. Before I could respond, my building's intercom buzzed. The voice that came through was unfamiliar, crisp, professional, with a slight British accent. Miss Holloway? My name is James Whitmore. I work for Mr. Morrison. Might I come up for a moment? Jenny and I exchanged glances. What do you want? I called back. Mr. Morrison asked me to deliver something to you. I'll only take a moment of your time. Against my better judgment, I buzzed him up. James Whitmore turned out to be a distinguished man in his 50s, impeccably dressed and carrying himself with the kind of quiet authority that suggested he was used to handling delicate situations. Miss Holloway, he said with a slight bow, I apologize for the intrusion. I'm Mr. Morrison's personal assistant and, occasionally, his crisis management specialist. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Alex's familiar handwriting. He wanted you to have this, along with his assurance that he will respect your wishes for space and privacy. The security detail will remain as long as there's media interest, but they have strict instructions not to monitor your activities or report back on your movements. Why should I believe that? I asked. James smiled sadly. Because, Miss Holloway, I've worked for Alexander Morrison for 15 years. I've seen him through business deals worth hundreds of millions, hostile takeovers, media scandals, and personal tragedies. I have never seen him as devastated as he was when he returned to the office this afternoon. After James left, I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in Alex's careful handwriting. Madison, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know I handled everything wrong from the beginning, but I need you to understand something. Every moment we spent together, every conversation, every kiss, that was real. The man who fell in love with you in that library, who defended you against your mother's cruelty, who brought you flowers and listened to your stories, that man exists. The money doesn't change who I am at my core. I'm not asking you to come back to me. I'm asking you to believe that what we had was genuine, even if the circumstances weren't entirely honest. If you never want to see me again, I'll respect that. But if there's any part of you that thinks we might be worth fighting for, I'll be waiting. All my love, Alex. P.S. Ties. I've arranged for the reporters to be kept at a distance, but I can't control the story. It will die down soon, but until it does, please be careful. There are people who will try to use this situation against both of us." Jenny read the letter over my shoulder, then whistled softly. "Damn, girl. That man is either the most manipulative person alive or he's genuinely in love with you." I folded the letter carefully, my hands trembling. How am I supposed to know the difference? "I guess," Jenny said gently, "that's what you have to figure out." Outside, the last of the reporters were packing up their cameras, but I knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow there would be more stories, more speculation, more strangers dissecting my life for entertainment. But tonight, alone in my apartment with Alex's letter in my hands, I had to decide whether love was worth the risk of believing in someone who had already proven he could lie to protect himself. The answer, I realized, would determine not just my future with Alex, but who I was willing to become. Monday morning brought a new kind of hell. The library director, Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald, called an emergency meeting before we opened to the public. I sat in her office, surrounded by concerned faces and a stack of newspapers that made my stomach churn. "Madison," Mrs. Fitzgerald began carefully, "we need to discuss your situation." The Chicago Tribune's headline screamed, "Librarian lands billionaire, inside the Cinderella story that has Chicago talking." Below it was a photo of me taken through the library's windows, apparently helping a patron find a book. The invasion of privacy felt like being stripped naked in public. "I never asked for any of this," I said quietly. "We know, dear, but the board is concerned about the disruption this might cause. We've already had reporters calling asking about your employment history, your salary, even requesting interviews with your coworkers." Jenny Martinez, who'd been silent until now, leaned forward. "Are you firing her for dating someone?" "Of course not," Mrs. Fitzgerald said quickly. "But Madison, you have to understand, this library serves the community. We can't have reporters camping outside our doors, bothering patrons, turning our workspace into a circus." The message was clear without being explicitly stated. Fix this problem or find another job. "I understand," I said, feeling another piece of my normal life crumble away. "I'll take some personal time until this blows over." But as I cleaned out my desk, I wondered if anything would ever really blow over. According to the internet, I was now permanently linked to Alexander Morrison in the public consciousness. Even if we never spoke again, I would always be that librarian who dated the billionaire. The media attention intensified over the next few days rather than diminishing. Photographers followed me to the grocery store. Someone leaked my college transcripts to a gossip blog. A former high school classmate sold a story about how I was always a dreamer who thought she was too good for regular guys. But the worst part was my family's reaction. Patricia called every few hours with increasingly frantic demands that I fix things with Alex. My Aunt Carol drove in from Springfield just to lecture me about throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime. Even my cousin Sarah, who I'd always been close to, left voicemails suggesting I was being unnecessarily dramatic about the deception. "Madison, be practical," Patricia said during one particularly heated phone call. "So he didn't tell you about the money immediately. So what? You've been dating for 2 months, not 2 years. People reveal things gradually in relationships. He lied about his entire identity, Mom. He protected himself, which shows good judgment. Madison, do you have any idea what doors this could open for you, for our entire family?" There it was, the real reason for Patricia's sudden change of heart. It wasn't about my happiness, it was about the social capital she could gain from having a billionaire son-in-law. "I'm not a commodity to be traded for social status," I said coldly. "Don't be naive, everything is about status and connections, that's how the world works." I hung up and immediately called the one person who might understand my perspective. My grandmother Rose, my father's mother, who lived in a retirement community in Florida. "Sweetheart," her warm voice came through the phone like a lifeline. "I saw the news, how are you holding up?" For the first time in days, I broke down completely. I told Grandma Rose everything. The deception, the media circus, my family's sudden greed, my confusion about what was real and what wasn't. "Madison," she said when I finished, "let me tell you something about your grandfather. When I met him, he told me he was a struggling mechanic. It turned out he owned 3 auto shops and was quite well off for a young man in 1962. Grandpa lied to you too? He protected himself, just like your Alex is protecting himself. The difference was the scale and the times. There wasn't the internet and social media to complicate things. She paused, but the heart of it was the same. He wanted to know I loved him for who he was, not what he could provide. How did you get past it? By asking myself one question. Did the money change how I felt about the man I'd fallen in love with? If the answer was no, then the deception was forgivable. If the answer was yes, then the relationship was built on false foundations anyway. That night, I found myself really thinking about Alex for the first time since discovering his identity. Not Alexander Morrison, the billionaire, but Alex, the man who'd spent hours listening to my stories about Chicago's architectural history, who'd defended me against Patricia's attacks without knowing my family history, who'd held me when I cried about feeling invisible and worthless. The money didn't change those moments. The money didn't make his tenderness less real or his laugh less genuine. But it did change everything else. Where we could go, what people would think, how our relationship would be perceived by the world. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Madison, this is James Whitmore. Mr. Morrison wanted you to know that he's flying to London tomorrow for business meetings. He'll be gone for 2 weeks. He hopes this will give the media time to find other stories and allow you some peace. He also wanted you to have his direct number in case you need anything while he's away. Below was Alex's personal cell number and an international number for emergencies. Even in exile, he was still trying to protect me. That evening, Sarah finally came by to see me in person. My cousin had always been the practical one, the sister I'd never had, and I was desperate for her support. Madison, she said, settling onto my couch with a cup of tea, I need you to listen to me with an open mind. If you're here to tell me I'm an idiot for walking away from Alex, you can save your breath. I'm here to tell you that you're an idiot for walking away from yourself. I looked at her in confusion. Madison, for as long as I've known you, you've let other people define your worth. Patricia convinced you that you weren't smart enough, pretty enough, successful enough to deserve real love. But this man, Alex, he saw something in you that even you don't see in yourself. He lied to me, Sarah. Yes, he did, and that was wrong. But Madison, putting aside the money for a minute, how did he treat you? Did he make you feel valued? Did he respect your opinions, support your dreams, make you feel beautiful and intelligent and worthy of love? I thought about Alex listening intently as I explained the historical significance of some forgotten Chicago landmark. The way he'd looked at me like I was the most fascinating person in the world. How he'd never once made me feel stupid or small or inadequate. Yes, I whispered. Then maybe the question isn't whether you can forgive him for having money he didn't tell you about. Maybe the question is whether you can forgive yourself for believing you don't deserve someone who sees your value. After Sarah left, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, trying to see myself through Alex's eyes instead of Patricia's. What had he seen that first day in the library? What had made him want to know more? I thought about his letter, his promise that the man who'd fallen in love with me was real, regardless of the circumstances. I thought about Patricia's lifetime of criticism, and how it had shaped my belief that I wasn't worthy of genuine love. I thought about the reporters calling me a gold digger when I'd walked away from billions of dollars because I valued honesty over wealth. And I thought about Alex somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, giving me space to figure out whether love was stronger than fear. My phone sat on the counter, his number glowing in my recent messages. One call could change everything. One conversation could determine whether I spent the rest of my life wondering what if, or fighting for something that might be worth all the complications. But as I reached for the phone, a new text appeared from Patricia. Madison, I've arranged a lunch meeting with Eleanor Whitman and the hospital board social committee. They want to discuss having you involved in the spring gala planning. This could be your entire Chicago society. Don't ruin this opportunity with your stubborn pride. I stared at the message, feeling sick. Even now, even with Alex gone, Patricia was trying to use his wealth and status for her own social climbing. The realization hit me like a physical blow. If I went back to Alex, I would never just be Madison again. I would always be Alexander Morrison's girlfriend, then wife, then widow. Every relationship, every opportunity, every social interaction would be filtered through his identity and his money. But maybe, I thought as I looked at my reflection one more time, being just Madison had never been enough anyway. The question was whether I was brave enough to find out who I could become if I stopped hiding from love just because it came with complications. Outside my window, Chicago sparkled like a promise in the darkness. Somewhere in that city was a man who'd seen value in a lonely librarian when he could have had anyone. The question was whether that librarian was brave enough to believe she deserved him back. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the Morrison Industries building holding a visitor's badge and questioning every decision that had led me to this moment. Alex had returned from London the night before, and James Whitmore had called that morning to tell me Alex would be in his office until 6 if I wanted to see him. I'd spent 14 days in a strange kind of limbo. The media attention had mostly died down, replaced by some celebrity scandal that proved more entertaining than a librarian's love life. I'd returned to work, endured Patricia's daily lectures about missed opportunities, and tried to figure out who I was without Alex Morrison in my life. The answer was lonely, lonelier than I'd ever been, even during all those years when I thought I was content with solitude. But I hadn't come here to reconcile. I'd come to return something. The elevator ride to the 60th floor felt eternal. When the doors opened, James Whitmore was waiting with his usual impeccable composure. "Miss Holloway," he said warmly, "he's in his office. Shall I announce it to you? Actually, I just need to give you something to give to him." I pulled the small velvet box from my purse, the one containing the pink diamond ring Alex had given me during our fake engagement story, the one I'd forgotten I was wearing when I fled his office 2 weeks ago. James looked at the box, then back at me with something that might have been disappointment. "I see. Would you like me to include a message?" Before I could answer, Alex's voice came from behind me. "Madison?" I turned to find him standing in his office doorway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect appearance was slightly disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, his hair messed, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "I was just returning this," I said, holding out the ring box. Alex stared at it for a long moment, then stepped back into his office. "Please, come in. We should talk." Against my better judgment, I followed him inside. The panoramic view of Chicago still took my breath away, but this time I noticed personal touches I'd missed before. Family photos on his desk, books on architecture and history lining one wall, a small collection of vintage postcards from around the world. "You kept the ring for 2 weeks, Alex said quietly. "I forgot I was wearing it." "Did you?" His eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of hope there that made my chest tighten. I set the box on his desk and turned to leave, but his next words stopped me cold. "I fired Rebecca Chen." I spun around. "What?" "The Tribune reporter who ambushed you outside the building. I made some calls, applied some pressure. She'll find it difficult to get another journalism job in this city." Horror washed over me. "Alex, you can't just destroy someone's career because she invaded your privacy? Because she made you feel hunted and humiliated?" "Yes, Madison, I absolutely can." His voice was steel wrapped in silk. "And I did." "That's not your decision to make." "Everything that affects you is my decision to make if I have the power to control it." He moved closer, and I could see the dangerous intensity in his eyes that I'd glimpsed once before. "Do you have any idea what it was like to sit in London, completely helpless, watching strangers tear apart the woman I love on social media? Reading articles that painted you as some kind of opportunistic gold digger when you literally walked away from billions of dollars? So you decided to play God with someone's livelihood? I decided to protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it sent a thrill through my body that I tried desperately to ignore. "I'm not yours, Alex. That's the whole point." "Aren't you?" He was close enough now that I could smell his cologne, could see the exhaustion and longing written across his features. "Madison, I've dated women who cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts and vacations, who demanded constant proof of my devotion through expensive gestures. You wore a fake engagement ring for 2 weeks and tried to give it back. You're worried about a reporter's career when she tries to destroy your reputation for a byline. What's your point? My point is that you're exactly as rare and precious as I thought you were that first day in the library. The money doesn't change that. If anything, it proves it. I wanted to argue, but the words died in my throat when I saw the raw vulnerability in his expression. Madison, I know I should have told you the truth sooner. I know I handled everything wrong. But I need you to understand something. He reached for my hands, and I let him take them. I've been Alexander Morrison, billionaire, my entire adult life. I've been courted and flattered and manipulated by people who saw dollar signs when they looked at me. But for 2 months, with you, I got to just be Alex. I got to be loved for who I am rather than what I own. You took that choice away from me, I said softly. You decided I couldn't handle the truth, so you made the decision for me. You're right, and I'm sorry. But Madison, can you honestly tell me that if I'd walked into that library and introduced myself as Alexander Morrison, billionaire CEO, you would have given me a chance? The question hung between us like a challenge. I thought about my reaction to discovering his wealth, my immediate assumption that someone like him couldn't genuinely want someone like me. I don't know, I admitted. I do. You would have assumed I was slumming, looking for some kind of novelty. You would have been polite and professional and completely closed off to any possibility of something real between us. He wasn't wrong, and we both knew it. But that still doesn't make the deception okay, I said. No, it doesn't. But Madison, relationships aren't about being okay, they're about being worth it. Is what we have worth fighting through the complications? Is it worth the media attention and the social pressure and the fact that everything will be harder because of who I am? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed with an urgent alert. Alex glanced at it and his expression darkened. What is it? I asked. He showed me the screen. It was a news alert. Breaking. Morrison Industries stock plummets amid CEO personal scandal, board calls emergency meeting. I don't understand, I said. Someone leaked details about my past relationship with Victoria, my ex-fiancée, and her affair with my business partner. They're painting it as a pattern of poor judgment in personal relationships affecting my business decisions. Alex's jaw tightened as he scrolled through his phone. The board is meeting tonight to discuss my future with the company. Your own company? Morrison Industries went public 5 years ago. I'm the majority shareholder. But if the board loses confidence in my leadership... He trailed off, but the implications were clear. This is because of me, I said, horror washing over me. Because of our relationship. No, Madison. This is because of people who want to destroy what we have for their own gain. His voice turned cold. Victoria's been trying to get back into my life since she heard about you. When that didn't work, she decided to go nuclear. I stared at him, seeing for the first time the full scope of what loving Alexander Morrison meant. It wasn't just about media attention or social pressure. It was about being a target for anyone who wanted to hurt him, a weapon that could be used against him. Alex, I said quietly, maybe we're just from different worlds. Maybe some gaps are too big to bridge. He stepped closer, his hands framing my face with a tenderness that made my heart ache. Madison, the only gap between us is the one you create when you believe you're not worthy of being loved completely and unconditionally. I don't care about different worlds, I care about you. But your company. Will it survive or it won't? But I won't survive losing you again. His thumbs brushed away tears. I didn't realize I was crying. Madison, I'm asking you to take a leap of faith with me, not because it will be easy, but because some things are worth fighting for. What if I can't handle it? What if I'm not strong enough for your world? Then we'll figure it out together. But Madison, you walked away from billions of dollars because your principles mattered more than comfort. You stood up to your mother's manipulation even when it would have been easier to give in. You're stronger than you know. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision before me. Staying with Alex meant accepting a life of complications, scrutiny, and challenges I couldn't even imagine. But walking away meant accepting Patricia's version of myself, the one who wasn't worthy of extraordinary love. Alex, I said, opening my eyes to meet his gaze, if we do this, really do this, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more lies. No more protection through deception. If we're going to face this world together, we face it honestly. A smile broke across his face like sunrise. I promise, complete honesty even when it's scary. And I need you to uninspire Rebecca Chen. What you did was wrong, regardless of your intentions. Done. And we need to go see my mother. Alex's smile faltered slightly. Your mother? She needs to understand that if she wants to be part of our lives, she has to accept me as I am, not as an extension of your wealth and status. That conversation is going to be horrible, I finished, but necessary. Alex laughed, pulling me into his arms. Are you sure you're ready for all of this? I thought about Patricia's shocked face when she realized her failure of a daughter had been right about something important. I thought about the reporters who'd learned that the gold digger was actually the one setting boundaries about wealth and status. I thought about proving to myself that Madison Holloway was worth fighting for. I'm sure, I said, standing on my toes to kiss him. As our lips met, Chicago sparkled beyond the windows like a promise of all the adventures we'd face together. It wouldn't be easy. Love worth having never was. But for the first time in my life, I was choosing to believe I deserved something extraordinary. Even if it came with complications I never could have imagined. 2 hours later, we stood outside Patricia's front door, hand in hand, ready to face the woman who'd spent 25 years telling me I'd never find love. Alex squeezed my hand. Ready? I smiled, feeling stronger than I ever had before. Ready. Patricia opened the door, took one look at us together, and her champagne glass slipped from her trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor. Madison, she whispered, staring at Alex in recognition and disbelief. Who exactly did you marry? I squeezed Alex's hand back and smiled at my mother's shocked expression. Mom, I said, savoring the moment, meet my husband Alexander. For once in her life, Patricia Holloway was completely speechless. And for the first time in mine, I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.